Hello student, Vandana Bagal here. Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to learn the experiment from the course Software Testing and Quality Assurance Laboratory. First experiment of Software Testing and Quality Assurance Laboratory is write a program to compute total taxable income as per income tax slab and list out the various test scenarios. The objective of this experiment is to identify the functionality that can be tested for various test scenarios. And at the end of this experiment, you will be able to write test scenarios using software testing fundamentals. Software requirement for this experiment is very simple, that is you should have a C or C++ editor. So by using this editor, we are going to perform our first experiment of software testing and quality assurance laboratory. Now let us have the description about the experiment. Our aim is we have to calculate taxable income as per given income tax slab, or this income tax slab you may decide at your own, and based on that program you have to list out the various test scenarios. As we have to write this program using C or C++ editor, so we have to calculate the taxable income. To calculate taxable income, we need to define the tax slabs. So here I have considered there are 4 slabs. You may redefine these slabs at your end, or you may use these slabs only. So first slab that I have decided is tax is 5% if income is between 2,50,000 to 5 lakh. Tax is 20% if income between 5 lakh to 10 lakhs. Tax is 30% if income is more than 10 lakhs. And if income is less than 2,50,000, then there is no tax. So you have to write the program by considering the slabs that you have decided, or you may follow these slabs only. You have to write a simple C program using if-else condition which follows these slabs. Now, it is as you are a third year MCA student, so it is very easy for you to write the program by including if-else statement. So let us move on to understand what is test scenario. A test scenario can be defined as any functionality that can be tested, or it is also called as test condition or test possibility. So if you have any project with you, then for that project you may write your test scenario. That means you are actually going to identify the functionality of your project that can be tested. So as a tester, you should put yourself in the end user's shoes and figure out the real world scenarios and use cases of the application under test. So whatever project is in your hand, for that project you have to imagine yourself as an end user and how end user expects functionality from that project. That functionality you have to identify. That is nothing but the test scenario. What is scenario testing? Scenarios are generally used for testing. So scenarios help in an easier way of testing of the more complicated system. So though your system is complicated, your requirements are more and more complicated, but if you have defined your test scenarios, if you are having test scenarios with you, then it is easy to check the functionality of any system. Now, let us see why to create test scenario. Creating test scenario ensures the complete test coverage. Test scenario can be approved by various stakeholders like business analyst, developer, customer to ensure the application under test is thoroughly tested. It also ensures that software is working for most common use cases. Now let us see when not to create test scenario. If you are having project that follow agile methodology like Scrum, in that case may not create test scenario. Now let us understand how to write test scenario. First step is read requirement document. So you may prefer SRS, that is software requirement specification of the system. Read that document thoroughly. Second step is for each requirement figure out possible user actions and objectives. Determine the technology aspect of this requirement. So in the second step, you have to figure out the various actions, various functionalities that can be carried out in the particular requirement, and accordingly what is the objective, and to implement that action to achieve that objective, what is the technology aspect of that requirement. Third step is list out different test scenarios that verify each feature of the software. So whatever actions you have identified in the second step, for all that actions you have to define different test scenarios. Fourth step is the scenario created are reviewed. So whatever test scenarios you have written, you have created, that test scenarios should be reviewed by your supervisor. So in case of industry, these scenarios are reviewed by supervisor. In our case, you may consider supervisor as your fellow classmate, as your friend, or you may review your test scenario by your course teacher. Later, they are also reviewed by other stakeholders in the project. Well, this step can be followed in the industry itself. Now, next is tips to create test scenario. There are a few simple 2 steps from my side to create the test scenario. Each test scenario should address minimum of the requirement. Though from the programmer's point of view that functionality is very easy or very complicated for you, but in both the cases, each test scenario should address minimum of one requirement. So try to avoid the writing test scenario with the complicated manner. So avoid creating complicated test scenario which address multiple requirements. So you should stick to my test scenario. My one test scenario will address only one requirement of the system. Now let us understand how to write the test scenario by a simple example. Here I have considered as a login application example. As for any kind of project, its first step or its first exposure to the user is the login to that application. So to perform login to any software is also a one kind of functionality or the activity of that project. So let us understand how to write the test scenario for the login application. Now here, this is the window which is actually visible to my end user, which includes for the login facility, user have to write the email, which can be a phone for mobile accounts, or password. Okay, so user have to write email and password. Then user may click on sign in. Okay, so apart from these, there are a number of options given on the screen, like forgot your password. So there is one functionality inside this login application, that is forgot your password. And there is one checkbox also, keep me signing off, or user has not already having an account. In that case, creating account is also possible. New account is also possible. So let us assume that this particular page is already developed by a developer for a system, and as a tester you are going to test this particular page. So what different test scenario you will write for particular this login application, that we will see now. So here I have given you sample test scenario for the login application. So for this particular page, as a tester, you may write likewise number of test scenario. Check system behavior when valid email ID and password is entered. So how your system will react when a valid email ID and password is entered, that you have to check. That can be your test scenario. Check system behavior when invalid email ID and valid password is entered. So your system should not allow the user to enter into the system if one of the cases is invalid. So accordingly, your system should behave properly as per expectation. Check system behavior when valid email ID and invalid password is entered. Okay, so how your system will behave when one of the option is correct and one option is wrong. So in each of these tests, your system should behave as per expectation. Check system behavior when invalid email ID and invalid password is entered. Check system behavior when email ID and password are left blank and sign in is entered. So how your system will behave when user has not entered any email ID and password and user has directly clicked on sign in option. In that case, how your system is reacting. Check forgot your password is working as per expectation. Check system behavior when valid or invalid phone number and password is entered. Check system behavior when keep me sign in is checked. When we click on this checkbox, then how system will behave, that we have to check. So regarding for this particular page, that is login of application, whatever are the number of possibilities that can be happen through the end user, all that possibilities we have to write in test scenario, and particularly we have to check for that particular possibility, for that particular test, how our system is behaving, how our system is reacting. And the answer for this is as per the developer's expectation, as per the software requirement document expectation. So accordingly, we will list out the test scenario for the given application. So for this particular experiment number 1, you are going to write down the program for to calculate the income tax for the particular salary. So we have to already define what are the tax slabs that we have considered, which I have already shown you earlier. So you will write your C program based on these tax slabs, and then you have to verify your application based on the test scenario. Now, once we have identified or we have listed down the test scenario, then how to present this test scenario in a document, how to write this test scenario in a document. For that, we use test scenario template. Now, what are the different fields that are included in test scenario template are test scenario number. So, how many test scenarios you have identified? Accordingly, assign numbering to your test scenario based on which particular next field is requirement ID. Requirement ID means for which particular requirement which is given in the software requirement specification document, according to that document for which particular requirement you are writing test scenario, that requirement ID you should mention here. Next field is test scenario description. Here you are going to write down the description about the particular application for which you are writing test scenario. And the last column is test cases, where you write the test scenarios that you have identified. So, in this way, in this experiment number 1, initially you are going to write down the C program for the income tax calculation. Once your program is executed, then list out the various test scenarios, and this test scenario should be written properly by using test scenario template. This test scenario template may include these fields, whereas all these format or this template is the tester defined. So you may define your own test scenario template. This is the sample template which I am providing to you. So how these fields can be arranged, it is up to the tester only. So once you have written your program in C, okay, then your program is executing as per your expectation. Then list out the test scenario as per information given in this video. Then whatever test scenario you have list out, then write all that test scenario in the test scenario template, and finally get it checked from your friend, from your classmate, and finally from your course teacher. So in this way, in this video we have learned the experiment number 1 of software testing and quality assurance laboratory. Thank you.